Great. Well, welcome everyone to our 2023 annual report webinar. It says 2023, but truly this is for stats for 2022. And even though that year is in the rearview mirror, we still have a little bit of work to do in terms of reporting on it. So thank you all for coming. And I have a little presentation for you, but I'm going to be showing you a lot of things today on the intranet and even a few things on the PLSB website. So follow along if you'd like, or just watch and save this recording for later if you'd like to refer back to it. So quick introduction. My name's Lena Kelly. I'm the Manager of Technology Services. These are the two ways that are best to get a hold of me. Any email that comes in through Ask YRL, if it's for me, it'll get sent over. So never hesitate to contact us through that email. It'll end up where it needs to be. And just a few housekeeping things. Feel free to raise your hand to ask any questions or pop them in the chat. I have the chat open here on the side. I will leave time at the end for questions. There always are questions with this kind of nitpicky work, so feel free to ask anything that you are confused about. I also have a little FAQ section at the end about with some of the questions I've been asked already from libraries and some information about that. So after the FAQs, we'll open up the floor and see if your question isn't answered through the presentation. So for those of you who are new to libraries, what is the annual report? It's an opportunity to share your stats and results of the year with the Public Library Services branch. There are specific things they ask for you to measure, and then there's an opportunity at the end of the report to share some successes or stories or anecdotal sorts of evidence. And I strongly encourage anyone filling out the annual report to fill in that section. Those stories have a profound impact and are very useful for anyone who needs them to promote libraries or advocate on our behalf. So I would highly recommend you sharing your successes with the PLSB. I know they appreciate it and do read those things you share with them. The annual report is also tied to your operating grant, which those of you who this is not your first go around, you will know that this is your operating grant is contingent on you handing in this report in a timely fashion. Speaking of which, the date to file this report with the PLSB is February 28th. So we have about a month to get through it. And hopefully, if you have any questions, you have plenty of time to reach out to us to get the answer. So accessing the annual report, statistics, and all the information related to that. The web page that, let me just double check before I continue. Everybody can see my presentation correctly, right? It's showing up well. I had that happen in a webinar a little while ago. I'll just wait. Oh, good. Okay, perfect. I will show you Yellowhead's website and where you can find a link to the intranet where we have all of this set up for you for the annual report. So Yellowhead's main webpage, yrl.ab.ca, takes you to our front page here, and you can see a link right there to the YRL intranet. If you have any trouble getting onto the intranet, just let us know and we'll help you through it. Once you're in the intranet, there's a tab over here called Reports and Statistics, and there's a little drop down that says Annual Report. If you accidentally click on it, there's the annual report information, and this has been updated for this year. So the first part of this page you're going to want to look at is the PLSB documentation and logging into LibPass. So forgive me for those of you who've done it before. I'm just going to go through this as if we have no knowledge of LibPass. So here's all the LibPass information you might need. Here's where you would click to get into LibPass. And if you are missing your username and password, you can contact the PLSB for that. And if you need the contact information for them, just let us know and we can get you the proper email address of which consultant to contact there. What's really useful on this page is this document right here, 2023 Survey and 2022 Annual Report Reference Key. This PDF will show you every single field on the annual report and what exactly they mean by the terminology they're using. So they will define what e-content is. They will define what a volunteer is, these kinds of things. So I would suggest that you print this out and have it in hand while you're doing your annual report, because it's great to refer back to. And many of the questions I've had from libraries, I've just popped open this PDF and been able to answer it for them. And of course, if anything on there still seems unclear or doesn't make sense, you're welcome to reach out and we'll help you work through it. The guide to using LibPass after this is, again, a PDF that just shows you instructions on how to use the different features in LibPass, the drop-down menus, that sort of thing. All right, we'll head back to the intranet here. Oh, actually, I'll head back to my presentation. So there were a number of big changes to the annual report this year in 2022. And some of these changes caused us as a regional consortium, as TRAC, to have to rewrite the annual report that you run in Polaris. So some of the big changes highlighted here are patron counts for active patrons. The definition of an active patron changed. So we used to just see whose cards were not expired and we would run that. But this year we are now changing the way we calculate that. So it's going to look at all patrons who had a transaction in the past year, as well as all patrons whose cards expired in the past year, but they didn't do a transaction. So we could assume until their cards expired, they were maybe using e-resources and things like that. So that's what the count that you see on the annual report means now. There's a new section as well, electronic equipment for loan. I will go through a little later what that section means. Of course, they're always asking about e-content. I think there were a few changes this year, but you don't have to worry about that because that's always the region who takes care of that. And they combined some stats for websites, internet use, and public computer use. So the big takeaway that I want to give everyone here is if you look at the annual report and you have all these stats from last year that you're used to giving and you don't see it there, don't be stressed out by what's not on the report from last year. If it's not on the report, you don't have to worry about it. So stay calm and fill out your annual report. I'm going to take you on a little tour of the intranet now. We're going to go through all the different sections of the intranet. So we already looked at the PLSB section for the annual report, once again in the annual report section. So we looked at this PLSB section, and I wanted to highlight the next section here. This second part here is everything you'll need from Yellowhead to get your stats going. So there are instructions here about how to print the annual report in Polaris. These are step-by-step instructions of how Polaris works for that. And I can take us through that if you like. So I'll open up Polaris here. And this year's report is wonderful because it is, oh, it's paused my screen sharing. Oh, my Polaris is not loading. Well, maybe we can just assume that people know how to get there in Polaris. The instructions here are very granular. I'll just open them up so we can see. So there's brief instructions here and then screenshots if you are less accustomed to using Polaris. So basically you're going to go into the custom folder in the utilities reports and notices. You're going to double click on the annual report updated November 2022. And I think it actually says updated January 2023 now because we had to do a quick update after Christmas. You're going to make sure to choose the year 2022 for your stats, not 2021. And then you'll get correct numbers. And your report will run. It will be about 3 pages long. And I don't know if I have an example. Yeah, this is what the report looks like after it runs and opens in a PDF. All right. So all the things on that page are going to be used for your filling out your annual report. I recommend that when you're looking at your patron counts, there's 2 different numbers there. Let me see if I can pull it up on that report. If it's in that screenshot. There's 2 different numbers there, like I said, with the patron counts as one of the numbers that changed. Oh, it's not there. I'll see if I can pull it up at the end of this. One is active patrons and expired patrons. Add those two numbers together because, as I mentioned before, one of those numbers is patrons whose cards expired in the year. So maybe they were active online using e-resources. We're not sure. We don't have a way of tracking that, but we can maybe assume. And then the other number is how many people have actually checked an item out from your library. So you can add those two numbers together and get your total number of active patrons as defined by the PLSB this year. Like I said, they changed the definition to people who have used the library in any capacity. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Let's go back here. The next piece of information you'll need to finish your annual report is the wireless statistics from the 2022 statistics page. So we'll open that up and have a look. So you're going to choose your library from the drop-down menu here, and I see Shannon from Hinton is here, so I'm going to use her library. A lot of these stats you're not going to need for the annual report. They're for your interest's sake to share with your board. We gave you these numbers monthly throughout 2022, so hopefully they're not a big surprise to you, but in terms of the virtual circulation, you don't have to worry about that. Yellowhead does report on that number at a larger scale than you have to worry about. So there will be a note in the annual report that the region takes care of certain things related to e-content. What you will want here is public Wi-Fi sessions. So this total here. And let me see, I have my notes here. Total public sessions and, oh, I've lost my place in my notes. Pardon me. Oh, that's the only one you want here is the public Wi-Fi sessions. The other number that is kind of in this section on the annual report that it's going to ask you for is the public computer use. So how many people used public computers in your library in the past year? Unfortunately, we can't track that because of the way of our computers are set up. So you're going to have to estimate. Either you've counted the people using the computers throughout the year, or you can kind of estimate in a week how many people use the computers and then just multiply that by the number of weeks that you're open. So an estimate is fine with that one. So total public Wi-Fi sessions is the number that you want here. The rest is for your interest's sake. Okay, back to the annual report page. The next number that you're going to need is electronic equipment for loan. Unfortunately, we couldn't put this into the nice report that we print for you in Polaris because it's a little bit trickier to get. Everybody's electronic equipment is kind of defined and cataloged differently. So what the PLSB means by electronic equipment is any laptops, Chromebooks, wireless hotspots, iPads, e-readers that you loan out to your libraries. So the instructions here, you need to provide a number of items and the amount of times they circulated in the year. An estimate is fine for this too. You can manually count your devices and estimate their circulation if they're not cataloged in Polaris. So if you have a Chromebook and you think it went, you don't have it in Polaris, you think you lent it out maybe 10 times over the year, you could add that to the total. If your devices are cataloged in Polaris and you use Polaris to check them in and out, you could use record sets to find this number. And there's instructions here about how to put all those items into a record set and then use that in Simply Reports to get your total circulation. If you don't have any, if you don't have very many items, there's a really quick and dirty way to do this in Polaris. So let's say you only have 5 or you have 2 wireless hotspots, and to do this cataloging or this record set business is a little bit taxing. I have a screenshot here of where you can find this information in Polaris. So for example, I have Duffield's Wi-Fi Hub, a screenshot of their item record here. So I just found this in the catalog in Polaris. In the item record, you would click on this little button here that's green. And then you can see at the bottom of the form here, previous year-to-date circulation 4. So for one of their Wi-Fi hubs, Duffield had 4 circulations. If that's the only Wi-Fi hub they have, that's all they're going to put down. If that's the only electronic item they have, they're going to just put down that it's circulated. They have one item and it's circulated 4 times. So if you don't have a lot of items, this might be a little bit faster than creating the record set and going through all that business there. All right. That is electronic items. One last thing we were going to look at. We're not at this part just yet. Oops. Not at this part just yet. Let me get back to the SharePoint. All right. Okay, for website visits, so some of the stats you have to provide involve the website visits. We again keep these stats for you all year long. So you're going to look at the website stats. You're going to find your library code along the bottom here. So again, let's pick on Hinton. Hopefully we're not picking on you. Hopefully this is helpful. Oops, there it is. It's in alphabetical order backwards. There's Hinton. Okay, so for this one, you're going to look at the sessions number, the total sessions. That's the number you're going to report to the PLSB. And if you forget this, if you look in the that PDF I showed you that was on the PLSB's website that explains all the different fields, it tells you to look at sessions. So that's the number you're reporting for that. All right, let's go back to the intranet. Now, the last piece of statistics here is the e-content statistics, ebook, e-audiobook count and circulation. We will provide that information in our own annual report. So you don't have to worry about that. The ebooks and e-audiobooks are owned by TRAC. So we just count all that information up together. And then other e-content statistics around databases. What databases do you have? You don't have to fill anything out in there because all the e-resources you have are paid for by your region and provided to you by your region. So we provide all the statistics for that too. And then last of all, here on the intranet, this webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel, and there's a link there if you want to find it afterwards to review some of the information here. And let's go back to my PowerPoint. I will go back to where we were. Okay, so some frequently asked questions we've had so far from libraries. So I explained a little bit about the active patrons. So the definition of an active patron changed between last year and this year. So the PLSB defines an active card holder as a user whose card was used at some point during the reporting year to access physical and/or virtual library resources and services. This includes virtual borrowing activity as well as authentication to access electronic resources. Card holders can include people who are residents and non-residents, however, do not include Me Libraries users. That's not that important to you. That was important for us building that report. So that's the reason why we are counting people whose cards expired but did not check out any items in the year, because we are not sure. Maybe they were online using the databases. Maybe they were using Overdrive and just didn't come in to renew their card after it expired. So that's kind of the best estimate we can have, because we don't have the ability for a lot of our electronic resources other than Overdrive and things like that to see who exactly is using our e-resources. And some of our e-resources require an barcode to authenticate. Well, all of them require barcode to authenticate, but we don't keep that data on hand, who's authenticated and who hasn't, for privacy's sake, and also because it would just be a lot of data for us to store. So that is our best way to get what the PLSB is asking for. The next question we had was, what constitutes a volunteer? This can be a tricky question because if you look at the PLSB's explainer document, it is asking you not to include board members or friends of the library members in your volunteer count. So a volunteer, it says include all persons not on your board or in your friends group who help out with library related tasks. So such as shelving, programming, etc., and who do not receive pay. So the PLSB is not asking for friends group information anymore. That's a change from previous years. But if you have people who work in your library who help with the general operation of your services and who do not receive pay, those are your volunteers. Another question we had was, can I run this report every month to see my growth over the year? The way this report is structured is the data is static. So the report will not be available for you to run until the year is over. So if you log in now, you will see there's no 2023 option from the drop-down menu. We can only run this report in the past. So if you try to run this report throughout the year, you will only be able to see 2022 stats, unlike in previous years where we had to run the annual report at a certain time and date to capture the data effectively. That's why Yellowhead would run it for you. So we could make sure that those reports would run at 12:05 a.m. January 1st to get as accurate of data as we could for the previous year. But now that our whole reporting structure has changed, now that we've remade that report, you can run this report at any time of the year and you will get last year's data and it will look the same every time. So last question we've had is, these stats don't agree with my monthly stats. Why? Part of the reason for that is the monthly stats we provide you are using different definitions. So for example, new card holders on the custom statistical summary report. That's just new people who've signed up for a card. That's not people who've used that card in any capacity necessarily. So the definitions are different on some of these reports. So some of the stats you might be showing your board monthly may not look the same as the stats on your annual report. And if your board has any questions about that, I'm happy to explain to them about the different purposes for why we run reports and the different stats we gather. So for the annual report, the stats are very specific to what the PLSB wants and are maybe not a good reflection to use on a monthly basis of what services you're providing and what's going on in your library. It's very specific to the PLSB's context and not necessarily to your service delivery as your board might want to see it. So that's why they may not agree with your monthly stats exactly. All right. Thank you for coming to this webinar today. And I would love to open up the floor to any questions here. If you would like me to unmute you, I can do that. Oh, I see a big question in the chat. Christine says, can you also mention to everyone that the annual Indigenous Services Survey will be sent out soon for YRL to submit to PLSB on behalf of everyone within YRL? So this is a survey we send out on a form that will ask you about Indigenous programming, services to reserves, things like that. And you will fill out that web form and YRL will compile those results and submit it to PLSB. So please watch your inbox for that form. And please fill it out because it's important for us to know if you are engaging in Indigenous initiatives in your library, such as in programs or speakers or events, or in direct services to patrons on reserve. There's a lot of government support for that from the PLSB, so they love to hear about that, and it would really help us with our stats gathering. Any other questions about annual report? Joyce says, so last year we had to add family memberships differently, e.g. 3.1 per card. They're not asking for that this year, so you can just use the numbers on the report that you're given. So yeah, that might show a drop in card holders from last year, but that's kind of the way things have changed a little bit. If you go through the references or that document I showed you from the PLSB, it will tell you not to worry about it doesn't mention the family memberships there. Angie, do we just leave the e-content numbers empty? Yes, I know yes, you do. Some libraries do put a certain amount of their allotment, they give us a certain amount of their allotment to buy ebooks on Overdrive, for example. If you would like to report on those titles, you're welcome to, but that data will also be captured in our annual report that Yellowhead submits, so you don't have to worry about it. Any more questions? I will hang out here for another couple minutes to see if any more questions come in. If you have any questions after the fact, feel free to jump in. I appreciate everybody's patience with annual report. This is my first year dealing with annual report in this role. And of course, it's the year that they change everything at the PLSB. So it has been a steep learning curve for me as well as for you. And I appreciate everyone's patience. And if there's anything that you think I've said incorrectly or overlooked, please do not hesitate to let me know, and I will be happy to correct myself and look things up for you. All right, seeing no more questions coming in, I will call this the end of the webinar, and thank you all for taking time today to participate with us, and have a great Wednesday.